All right. It is time to finally answer the question we have been asking since August. Who's in? Good morning, college football fans. Big Al here on this. Today I will be unveiling the top 6 of the college football playoff standings as they happen live. And my television app that has ESPN decides to play today. So we'll be going from their broadcast here. So they'll be unveiling the top 25 in 2 parts. They'll unveil the top 6 here in a few moments. And then a little bit later on at 2:30 Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific, they'll unveil the rest of the rankings. So to give you a synopsis of what happened on championship weekend, Georgia won the SEC title, beating LSU. Michigan wins the Big Ten title, beating Purdue. They got another big second half. Then it gets a little dicey. TCU loses in overtime to Kansas State in the Big 12 title game, while USC fell Friday night to Utah in the Pac-12 championship. So you pretty much know who the top 2 is. Question is, who's 3 and who's 4? Many are speculating that TCU will be just fine despite the loss to Kansas State yesterday. And Ohio State will back into the top 4 thanks to USC. So if there's one thing that we can all agree on, is that USC is done as far as the college football playoff is concerned. Losing to Utah Friday night pretty much quashed any hopes of them winning the national championship. So my take, if I were on the college football playoff committee, I would have Georgia number 1, Michigan number 2. I would keep TCU at number 3 despite the loss, and I would move Ohio State up to number 4. I'd move Alabama to number 5, and I would drop USC to 6, or maybe even put a Kansas State there at number 6. Because Kansas State won the Big 12 championship game over TCU. So that would be my top 6 if I were on the committee. Georgia, Michigan, TCU, Ohio State, Alabama, and Kansas State or USC taking that number 6 spot. But we'll know in mere moments who the committee picks as the top 4 to represent in the college football playoff. Now, the 2 national semifinal games will be played at the Peach Bowl in Atlanta. I think that's the 1-4 matchup. And the Fiesta Bowl up the street from me in Glendale, which would be possibly the 2 versus 3 matchup. Yeah, Reese Davis and the college football crew on ESPN is setting up the scene right now. They'll be releasing the top 6 here. Now, I'm on live right now with the top 6 in the college football playoff. I will be back this afternoon at 2:30 Eastern time with the rest of the rankings and the other 4 New Year's 6 bowls and the matchups in those bowls. So this is pretty much part 1 of a 2-parter as far as the college football playoff rankings are concerned. Matt Alderton's on. He said, "Great win, go blue." Yes, sir. I watched the whole game. Michigan looked very sharp, especially in that second half. As everyone well knows, Michigan is a second half team, and they showed it again last night. It's going to be interesting, like I said, who the committee selects as their top 6. But again, I think it's going to be Georgia, Michigan going 1-2, and then it gets pretty iffy from 3 on down. So what do you think, or how do you think the top 6 should look before they unveil this? Do you think TCU should stay at number 3? Do you think they should fall after the loss to Kansas State? Because some are speculating that TCU will stay at number 3 and Ohio State will go to number 4. Some even had Ohio State going as high as number 3, which would mean a rematch with Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl, and TCU falling back to 4. But again, we can all agree on USC being out of the whole thing. All right. So there is no sound in the background because I do not want to get copyright strike by YouTube. And I can't show what they're talking about, so. And they got a whole mess of reporters. Georgia, Michigan, TCU, Ohio State, and Alabama. Well, personally, I don't think Alabama will get in. Alabama has 2 losses. If TCU is gonna be in, they need to keep them at 3, says Sparty Forever. UGA will blow them out. Well, if the only way TCU plays Georgia is if the committee drops them to number 4. Because if they stay at 3, they will get Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl. But yeah, that's a pretty good point there, Sparty. And I agree. I think they should keep TCU at number 3. I don't think they should be punished for losing in overtime like they did yesterday. So yeah, what are your thoughts? What's your top 6 look like? Like I said, I already gave my top 6. It would be Georgia 1, Michigan 2, TCU 3, Ohio State 4, Alabama 5, and either Kansas State or USC at number 6. Now the committee more than likely will punish USC. Question is, how far will the Trojans fall in these final rankings? We won't find out. If they make the top 6, we'll know right off the bat. But if they fall further than 6, we won't know till about 2:30 Eastern time. Okay, Sparty Forever has his top 6. He says Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Bama, TCU, and Tennessee. Okay. So Sparty does have a 2-loss Alabama slipping their way into the playoff despite not playing in their conference championship game. Because Alabama do have those 2 losses. That Tennessee loss and the LSU loss in overtime. Now, as for Bama, I don't think the committee is probably going to put Alabama in at number 4 because of those 2 losses. But then again, anything's possible. There's never been a 2-loss team in the history of the college football playoff. Who knows? They may make an exception with Alabama. So according to Sparty, Alabama would play Georgia and Ohio State would play Michigan. Sparty also says, but that's only if TCU would be at 4, because I'd rather see Alabama versus Georgia. And he also says, if TCU's at number 3, I'm fine with them making it. All right, they've got Chris Budden at the TCU watch party down in Fort Worth. Bunch of the Horned Frogs players are in attendance for that, waiting to see where they end up. Do they stay number 3? Do they slip to 4? Personally, in my opinion, I think TCU's as good as in. All right, now they've thrown it down to Marty Smith down in Tuscaloosa, as he's talking about Alabama's chances of perhaps crashing the top 4 and getting into the playoff despite them having 2 L's on their record. All right, so while we wait on this top 6, it is NFL Sunday after all. Who y'all got winning today? I'm personally going to be watching that Chiefs-Bengals game later on this afternoon. Mahomes versus Burrow. That should be a fun watch. Sparty Forever says, hopefully my Jaguars can win. Well, that would be a huge help to the Minnesota Vikings, because if the Vikings beat the Jets and Jacksonville wins in Detroit today, Minnesota locks up the division. All right, now they're looking at the playoff resumes of TCU, Ohio State, Alabama, and Tennessee. And just like Alabama, Tennessee also has 2 losses. I think the one thing that'll keep Tennessee out of the top 4 was that loss at South Carolina where they got pummeled. I mean, they gave up 63 points in that game. And then there's Alabama, their 2 losses to Tennessee and LSU. And it looks like they're ready to unveil the top 6 unless they're teasing us and going to commercial. And I think that's what they're doing. They're teasing us. Yep. They are definitely teasing us. Yep, Sparty's right. Tennessee has no path. Losing to South Carolina the way they did, they pretty much blew their chance. I mean, you can't expect to play for a national championship if you're going out and giving up 63 points to a conference opponent. I mean, it just doesn't work like that. I mean, that loss to Georgia wasn't a big deal, but the loss to South Carolina is really what killed the Vols. And they're on commercials. Sparty also says South Carolina's a good team, very underrated. I think South Carolina is going to make a lot of noise in the SEC in 2023. If I'm in Alabama or a Georgia, I'd keep my eye out next year on South Carolina, because I think they're going to make a lot of noise in the toughest conference in all college football. I mean, that SEC is tough by itself with Alabama and Georgia. Kentucky has proven themselves to be a very good team. Tennessee appears to be back. Then it's pretty much everyone else, like Florida and Texas A&M and Missouri. I mean, I don't even know what the hell happened to Texas A&M. I mean, they were a preseason top 10 team, and then they just flat out collapsed. And you can pretty much say the same thing about Oklahoma out in the Big 12. Oklahoma was a top 10 preseason team as well, and they had that losing streak middle of the season. That included getting shut out by Texas in the Red River rivalry. I mean, it's pretty disappointing to see Oklahoma in the position they're in this year. Because I think that's probably the one team in all of college football that had to have been the biggest disappointment of all of them was the Oklahoma Sooners. And then I'd say the Texas A&M Aggies are right behind them. Ain't no way you lose that lead that bad with that recruiting class. That's true, Sparty. Jimbo's trying to get fired, and he don't want to be there. I'm kind of 50-50 on that because I think A&M is committed to Jimbo Fisher. He just got to get the program up. Now, I don't know what happened with Jimbo this year, but I hope it doesn't translate into 2023. If I were an Oklahoma Sooner fan, I hope what happened this year doesn't translate into next year. Okay, they're back from commercial. And we're still waiting the unveiling of the top 6. So again, the national semifinal games will be played at the Peach Bowl in Atlanta and the Fiesta Bowl in Glendale, Arizona, which is not too far from me. All right, so again, the rest of the New Year's 6 bowls and the rest of the top 25 in the final CFP rankings will be unveiled at 2:30 Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific, and I'm assuming that ESPN will carry that live as well. If so, I will be back on here for that. And there's a look at the trophy that everyone's playing for. Georgia's the reigning national championship, or Georgia's the reigning national champion. They hope to keep that trophy in Athens another year. We shall see. So the national semifinal games are on New Year's Eve at 4 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. And then the national championship game, which is being played in Inglewood, California, is Monday, January 9th. And it is there in that $5 billion palace known as SoFi Stadium where a national champion will be crowned. And Reese Davis and the boys are still talking. I think they may be ready to unveil the top 6 now. Here we go. They're about to unveil the top 6. Georgia's number 1, no shock there. 13-0 record after they beat LSU in the SEC championship game yesterday. They hung 50 points on the Tigers, by the way, in that win. So again, Georgia is at number 1. And they'll be unveiling these teams one at a time. So pretty shortly we'll see who number 2 is. But we pretty much know who number 2 is. The big question is, who's number 3? Michigan is number 2 as expected. Michigan winning 43-22 over Purdue in the Big Ten championship game. Back-to-back Big Ten titles for Jim Harbaugh and the Wolverines. And they are in at number 2. Both Georgia and Michigan with matching 13-0 records. Now, here's the question we all want an answer to. Who's number 3? Is it Ohio State? Is it TCU? We are about to find out here in moments. Yeah, they're analyzing Michigan from what I can tell. Again, my television's on mute because I don't want to get a copyright strike from YouTube. And I think the committee have been mulling on who's going to be number 3. Oh, TCU does stay at number 3. So Sparty was right all along. TCU stays at number 3 with a 12-1 record. The one coming yesterday against Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game. And now the jubilation on the Horned Frogs, knowing that they're at number 3 and they're going to potentially play Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl on New Year's Eve. And I think that's going to be the second game of those semifinal matchups, the 8 o'clock game. Again, one game's at 4, the other game is at 8. So we answered who number 3 is. Now we're awaiting number 4, the last team into the college football playoff. And we all know it's not USC because they lost Friday night. So any Trojan fans that think, yeah, we're staying in the college football playoff even though we lost to Utah, sorry, man, don't know what to tell you. So again, to recap, Georgia number 1, Michigan number 2, TCU number 3, and we're still waiting on number 4. Again, they're unveiling these teams one at a time. All right. Sparty says, LOL, USC fans cope. True, my brother. All right, Ohio State's officially in. They're at number 4. And it looks like they'll be playing Georgia in one of these semifinal matchups. So your top 4 is all set. Georgia at number 1, Michigan number 2, TCU number 3, Ohio State number 4. And they'll be unveiling numbers 5 and 6 here soon, I hope. They take a lot of time analyzing this, don't they? And just think, in last year's final college football playoff rankings, Michigan was also, I think Michigan was number 2 in last year's college football playoffs rankings at the end. They were either number 2 or number 3. No, we were number 3 in last year's college football playoff rankings because we lost to Georgia in the semifinals. And Georgia went on to win the national championship. All right, Alabama moves up to number 5. And Tennessee, how about that? Rounds out the top 6. So your top 6, Georgia at 1, Michigan at 2, TCU at 3, Ohio State at 4, Bama at 5, and Tennessee at 6. So again, the SEC well represented in this top 6, and they will unveil teams 7 through 25 in about 2 hours at 2:30 Eastern time. Yeah, I was kind of predicting Kansas State would get number 6 if USC didn't. But it turns out we were both wrong, Sparty. As Tennessee ends up in that number 6 spot. And they were the number 1 team in the first college football playoff rankings this season, if you may remember. Okay, how about some score predictions from these semifinal games? Who do you think will win the semifinal games, and what are your score predictions? I think Ohio State has enough firepower to hang with Georgia, but at the end, the Bulldogs will have just too much firepower of their own for Ohio State to keep up. That being said, I think Georgia beats Ohio State 38-34, and they return to the national championship game. Now, in the other semifinal, I have Michigan winning 34-20 over TCU. All right, so Sparty says Georgia 41, Ohio State 24 in one semifinal, and he's got Michigan beating TCU 49-35. And there was an interesting point that was brought up during the broadcast of the Big Ten championship game last night after Michigan won. They said that last year Michigan did not have aspirations of a national championship. Their main objective last year was to beat Ohio State and win the Big Ten conference championship, and they did both of those things. Then they went to the college football playoff, got smoked by Georgia in the conference quarterfinals. Now this year, Michigan is thinking national championship. So, beat Ohio State, check. Win the Big Ten title again, check. Now, the Wolverines are eyeing a national championship. If they do win, it'll be their first since splitting the national title with Nebraska back in 1997. Of course, 97 was the last undefeated Michigan team led by Lloyd Carr. All right, Sparty, you and I both have Georgia and Michigan in the national championship game. Who do you think wins? You think Georgia repeats, or you think Harbaugh finishes the job and wins that title, brings it home to Ann Arbor? What do you think? The Michigan fan in me says the Wolverines are going to win. Like I said, Harbaugh's a man on a mission right now. And he wants that national title come hell or high water. I think, like I said, the Michigan fan in me wants the Wolverines to beat Georgia in the national title game. All right. Well, Michigan is my favorite college football team. I'm from Michigan originally, born and raised in Grand Rapids. My favorite NFL team is the Philadelphia Eagles. I grew up in a house of Lions fans, and I just couldn't go through that torture of being a Lions fan. So I was like, okay. Started watching football when I was 5 years old. Then I began watching Eagles highlights on NFL primetime growing up. And I would watch the Eagles highlights, and I was like, this is my team. Back then, the Eagles had a quarterback named Randall Cunningham. Took one Wolverine, get half my team arrested. Really? What happened? So yeah, my family, we're big football fans. I mean, we root for a lot of different teams. My older brother, who's back home in Grand Rapids, he's still a Lions fan. I was like, how can you go through all that torture year in and year out? You didn't hear about what happened in the tunnel at the Amish? Oh, yeah, I did. That was crazy. Apparently, some Spartans decided to fight some Wolverines in our tunnel after the game. And I think a couple of Spartans got arrested. It was crazy. But anyway, my older brother is a Lions fan, still is. My late father, who passed away in 2020, he was also a Lions fan. My mother's a Seahawks. My mother is a Seahawks fan, but she's a Seahawks and a Cardinals fan, but she's more of a Seahawks fan. She does have a Larry Fitzgerald Cardinals jersey. And my older sister, she's a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. She has a Troy Polamalu jersey. So what's your favorite NFL team, Sparty? Oh, half the team got arrested. Yeah, that was pretty crazy. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's the Jags. There's a lot of people outside of, say, Northeast Florida or Southeast Georgia that forgot that Jacksonville has an NFL team. Unless you really follow football, yeah, the Jacksonville does have a football team. I've been watching football, like I said, since I was 5 years old. So I'm more than 30 years in watching football. Let's see. I've been making NFL picks since I was about 13. Owner so bad he needs to sell the team. Oh, Shad Khan. Yeah, I think Shad Khan should just sell the Jaguars and stick with AEW because, he runs All Elite Wrestling as well. I think he should turn his full attention to wrestling and not on football. Quick question, though. If he does sell the Jaguars, do you think they'll stay in Jacksonville or do you think they'll move to another city? Oh, yeah, I watch wrestling. I watch the WWE mostly, but I do watch wrestling. I'm trying to get into the AEW. Who's your favorite wrestler? Relocate because Florida has too many teams. I don't think 3 is too many. I mean, they could move to Texas and and that would give them 3 teams. Move the Jaguars to either San Antonio or Austin. If you're talking about relocation, many people even have the Jaguars possibly relocating to London full time, but that's just going to screw up travel for all the other teams. Yeah, they play a home game there every year. I mean, it could be worse. They could move to Hawaii, and then the travel would be even more screwy if they move to Hawaii. But then again, there's not a lot of people out there. I think there's like 1 million people or so. Poor London gotta see trash ass football every year. So I think the 96 team, I think that the 96 Jaguars were probably the best team in the franchise's history. I say the 2017 is a close second. Yeah, I agree. My favorite wrestler is also Hari. I mean, I have so many of them. Yeah, I have so many favorite wrestlers, whether it's Ric Flair, Edge, Triple H, Rey Mysterio. I mean, I got a lot of them. I mean, I've been watching wrestling probably for as long as I've been watching football. So who do you think's going to win that Chiefs-Bengals game later today? MJF. Oh, Randy Orton. Randy Orton's awesome. Randy Orton hitting that RKO out of nowhere. Probably my favorite finishing move of all time right there. Oh, he's got the Chiefs. All right, so yep, Sparty's got the oh snap. Sparty's got the Chiefs. He believes that Patrick Mahomes will finally solve the Joe Burrow curse. Because this is a Cincinnati team that Patrick Mahomes is yet to beat. They went to Cincinnati around this time last year, and Jamar Chase torched them for like 260 some yards. And then they played in the AFC Championship game, and the Bengals ended up going into Arrowhead and winning that game. So hopefully, if you're Patrick Mahomes, the outcome's a lot different today than those other 2 games. I personally have the Bengals because it seems as if Joe Cool has Patrick Mahomes' number. Kind of like Tom Brady had his way with Peyton Manning back in the day. Yep, Jamar Chase is back. So he will be playing for the Bengals today. And that's going to be a spark for that Cincinnati offense. Okay, I'm about to wrap this up here as we recap the top 6 in the final college football playoff rankings. Georgia took the top spot. Michigan's number 2. Then you got TCU staying at 3. Ohio State moves into the top 4 with Alabama at 5 and Tennessee at 6. Okay, so that is it for now. I will be back here at 2:30 Eastern time with a look at the other 4 New Year's 6 bowls and the rest of the CFP rankings. That'll be coming your way at 2:30 Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. So that's less than 2 hours from now. So join me for that. In the meantime, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell twice, or not twice, but ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. Big Al signing off for now. Thanks for watching and enjoy the pigskin. We'll see you back here in less than 2 hours. Peace out.